Matt James has broken his silence on the racism controversy surrounding the Bachelor franchise. We're breaking down everything he had to say about Chris Harrison and Rachel Kirkonnell. Hey guys, welcome back to another Share News from Home. We have to unpack Matt's latest statement, but before we get started, if you're new here, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. As always, I'm your host Fiona Zaring, and today I'm joined by the wonderful Gabby Ganta and Mariah Davis. You guys, before we start talking about Matt's statement, I do just want to put out a little blanket disclaimer. Spoilers, I typically try to avoid, but it feels like this season they have just sort of come to every corner of Bachelor Nation. I think everyone's pretty aware, but we are going to be talking about this statement through the lens of some of those early on reality Steve spoilers that Rachel does ultimately win, because I think that kind of maybe gives us a look into Matt's perspective in writing this if they ultimately are true. So just a heads up, little spoiler warning in case you somehow did not hear. You guys, this is a huge development in the controversy currently surrounding The Bachelor. Matt has previously made some sort of short and sweet comments on the situation, but this is his first lengthy statement posted to Instagram. He started the statement by addressing the fact that he's had a very challenging time over the past few weeks. And while the season is, of course, still airing, he felt it was important to address some troubling information that has come to light since they wrapped. So you guys, we're going to break this down in chunks, and I just want to stop right there. Why now? Why do you think made him put this statement out as Hometowns is airing? Do we think ABC approved this? What do you think, Gabby?
Those are great questions. I think the timing had to be really well thought out because everyone has all their eyes on Matt right now as to what he thinks about this. Is he going to respond? His season's still airing, so we're looking at him in a different light from things that happened months ago. So I think he definitely took it into consideration. I think with everything that's come out in the past few weeks, everyone's watching the show with different eyes now because of what we know has gone on sort of behind the scenes. So I feel like he put out this statement to just sort of redirect people and saying, I know you're watching the season and everything, but there's still some things, this is on my mind and there's changes that needs to be made. So I don't know if it was approved by ABC. I know these contestants have to get everything approved by them. But it sounds like he's kind of going off the rails and just speaking from his heart right here. So I'm not sure.
The timing is definitely interesting. I think initially when I thought about the timing, I thought, well, why now? Why didn't you say something 2 weeks ago or however long? But I guess it makes sense. I mean, his statement may give people some ideas about his current situation, which we're going to get into. And so maybe he had to kind of think, well, given anything that I say could potentially have people start talking, and we still have several episodes before anybody really gets to know what happened. So I think timing was definitely thought out, kind of like you said. I also don't know if production really signed off on this statement. I can't really see how they could possibly deny him, to say something like this. So I'm glad that he's finally said something that we've all been like on pins and needles, just waiting for Matt to finally address. Well, I was most interested in hearing him addressing everything going on with Rachel because of the rumors that they ended up together. I was really kind of hoping to get some of that tea like earlier on, but I do think that all of this was strategic as far as timing.
I totally agree with both of you. I think the timing is definitely interesting. I have a feeling that it was strategic, but let's move on from that because there is a lot to talk about. Matt called out directly the quote, incredibly disappointing photos of Rachel Kirkonnell and the interview between Rachel Lindsay and Chris Harrison. He said, and I quote, Chris's failure to receive and understand the emotional labor that my friend Rachel Lindsay was taking on by graciously and patiently explaining the racism of the antebellum South, a painful history that every American should understand immediately, was troubling and painful to watch. Now, I have to say, we have unpacked that interview We have talked about, how upsetting it was, how disappointing it was. I think Bachelor Nation has been very clear on that. What kind of struck me here, and maybe it's just because we have talked about that interview at length, is it feels like while he is very clearly calling out Chris, it also sheds some light on what he thought of those photos, right? Because he's saying every American should understand immediately, what that's signifying. So, what do you think of this, Mariah?
Again, I am kind of glad that we're finally hearing Matt's thoughts on this because regardless of the true outcome of his season, we did see him really form a tight connection with Rachel. So to have something like this happen with a contestant who he had something special with, it's huge. And I can only imagine that that was gut wrenching for him to initially hear that news. So I think it was interesting to finally hear that statement. I knew that something was going to be said about Chris Harrison. He had kind of touched on it not shortly after everything went down. So I wasn't surprised to see him go a little further into that. But talking about Rachel, I mean, I think this is the first time that he's really addressed everything with Rachel.
Yeah, I'm glad that he was really specific in this statement about what he was talking about, mentioning the photos, mentioning Chris and the Rachel interview, because we can just find out better exactly his thoughts and how he was feeling about everything that's come out in the last week. I think overall, everything that's happened has just pointed out the flaws in the overall system of this show that is The Bachelor because, first of all, production and the casting directors and things are supposed to be doing immense background checks to find out if anyone has any dirt that might come up and make the show look bad, not be a good fit for the contestants. So something obviously went wrong there, where they didn't catch all of this stuff about Rachel. And then on the other hand, if Matt does end up with her and they get engaged at the end of the show, it just also is very telling to the fact that you don't really get to know a person in that short amount of weeks because when you're just going on fun dates here and there and you're just, hanging out for a day or a couple hours here and there, and even if you meet their parents for a few hours, you still just don't know them. Like racism topics and just like deep conversations about your past and things like that just doesn't come up in that short amount of time. You literally physically need more time to get to know somebody. So I think that is going to turn off a lot of viewers from watching because these love stories aren't as real as they make them out to be.
No, that's a really great point, Gabby. Especially, like you said, we as viewers, the people who go on the show, contestants, leads, all of them really have to put a lot of trust into the producers, into the people who cast them, because you figure they're seeing a bigger picture. They spotted something or they felt something. You trust these people to cast who may become your wife. So this definitely is not just a hit on, these events of the season. It really opens the conversation for shortcomings of the franchise overall, which Matt very specifically called out in his statement as well. He said that the franchise has fallen short for years, which I have to say, it's as simple as he is the first Black Bachelor. So the answer to that is yes, they have fallen short for years. Obviously, we started to touch on this a little bit. This season was supposed to be a huge step forward, right? But I feel like the more we move forward week to week, it just kind of exposed how off the mark they truly are in so many ways. I mean, even just the Mean Girls conversation that we've had over and over and over again, it's calling into question a lot of the steps that are being taken behind the scenes. What are your thoughts on this, Mariah?
I agree. It calls into question not only what steps they're taking in casting, but kind of their priorities to me. It kind of has struck me as if the priority of this season wasn't really to take steps in the right direction or to help really find love, build solid connections, but to just demonstrate toxic environments, obscene drama. I mean, we all love a little bit of the drama. That's some of the reason we tune in, but it overshadowed. It was 90% of the show was the drama. We didn't get to see certain conversations. We didn't get to see certain connections. And that's really disappointing. So, one thing that can be said about all of this madness is that it's exposed what the franchise has really been all of these years, maybe exposed things that other people haven't been able to. And that only, in my book, means that there's an opportunity for change within the system, and we're going to start to see entirely different seasons. I'm really hoping that in the future, we're not going to be so consumed with all of the drama that we don't get to see who the real bachelor or bachelorette may be. I know we've all kind of loved Matt James from seeing him on TikTok, from seeing him on all social media platforms. He's hilarious. He's got a great personality. And we so rarely got to see any of that really shine because it was just all about this drama. So it's been a toxic season for everyone participating and everyone viewing. So I'm ready for a positive change.
I agree. I think it's interesting because I know you were saying that, they were really trying to make changes this season and take a step forward and turn the page and all of that. And it's kind of gone south since then. But I think it's going to take time, right? So this franchise has been making seasons for years and years and years, 20 plus years, right? So I feel like it's not going to just do a 180 and flip on its head and just all of a sudden be extremely diverse and very inclusive and like include all the boxes that fans and other bachelor alums want to check. I think it's going to take time. So the fact that we had a black bachelor finally and so many more women of color, I think that was a great step forward. But maybe the producers were saying, okay, like we checked that box, which everyone was asking us to do, and then let's just sort of run with our plans as usual. You know how we normally produce our show, lean into the drama here and there, and not really lean into different storylines that people are wanting. So I feel like small steps are being made. They're certainly taken some steps backwards in the process as well, but I just think overall it's going to take a lot of time to get where they need to be.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. A band-aid isn't going to fix this. Just casting people that we've been dying to see for seasons and seasons and seasons isn't going to magically change, a franchise that's been run the same way for, let's face it, years and years and years. One thing that I feel really sad sort of reading this statement and trying to get into the lens of what Matt is going through right now is, he's using phrases like heartbreaking, to me, this is someone who signed on to try to find the love of his life. And from where we're all sitting right now, I think it's fairly obvious, that didn't happen. So it feels like there's a lot that went wrong here. And the person who really, really is probably bearing a very heavy weight of this right now is Matt. He actually revealed in the statement that he has reevaluated his own experience in the franchise and what it represents not just for himself, but for, quote, all of the contestants of color, especially the Black contestants of this season's and seasons past, and for the viewers at home. He closed his statement saying, I will continue to process this experience and you will hear more from me in the end, which is interesting. I definitely want to talk about that because what are we going to be hearing? I'm dying for more already. He said, my greatest prayer is that this is an inflection point that results in real and institutional change for the better. So we sort of have already talked about this, but a Band-Aid isn't going to fix this problem. Can the show bounce back by just continuing to do baby steps here and there? Do we need to hire new executive producers, new showrunners? Do we need to switch up people from the inside out, people that we don't know who they are, but that's what real change looks like? What do you guys think? Do we need a new show, basically, to move on from this chapter? Gabby?
We might need a whole new show up in here. I think Bachelor Nation and the Bachelor fans who have been here for years and years, I think they're going to keep watching, even though so much is going on behind the scenes. It's so drama filled. It's not what everybody likes. People will complain here and there. I feel like if The Bachelor's on TV, like people are going to watch it. Maybe ratings aren't as good as usual, but I think it's just going to take small steps here and there to get them where they need to be, as I was mentioning. But I really think that in The Bachelor, as well as just tons of different companies and industries right now, change starts at the top, as you were saying, Fiona. So not only in The Bachelor, but in every industry. The only way change is going to happen is if we get different executive producers, if we get diversity coaches in there. So I think it's definitely one of the steps they should start taking.
I agree. I think it's almost like they're going to need a whole rebranding. They're going to have to make some serious changes with their employees, whoever they've got at the top. They're just going to have to really clean house if they really want to create a new and inclusive and really just overall healthy environment kind of show for people to participate in and to view. I think before we found everything out about Rachel, before Chris Harrison's nonsense, looking at all of the drama, it was kind of like, okay, clearly we've got some producers that I don't know what their vision for the show is, but we need to change in direction because this is too much. And then everything came to light, and it's not so much that we need a change in direction anymore. It's we need a whole new show, and not necessarily just the content that they're producing and what they're giving to the world, but who's calling the shots. What actions can they do to really promote change rather than just talk about it?
I'm totally with you. You touched on this for a second. Can Chris Harrison, bounce back from this? I think a lot of people were really pleased to see him take, a step further than just statements, right? He showed some action. He stepped away. He feels like it's not right for him to be, a part of the conversation right now. And personally, I was thrilled to see him do that because I feel like you can say things, but there's only so many actions that someone like him can take, in a role like this. So do we think that it's kind of up to Chris or on Chris to continue leading the charge, as the face of the franchise action-wise? Or is this a good time for him to, maybe bow out? I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer to this. I'm curious what you think, Mariah.
At first, when all of this went down, I kind of thought, I don't know how Chris is going to recover from this. But this was also, he had only made his first apology, which I think everyone was kind of like, okay, he's apologized, but are you only apologizing because now the world is really upset with you? But now that we've seen that he's taken the necessary steps to not just be all talk, but he's following through with actions. He's letting his actions reflect his words. So I think at this point, maybe Chris can bounce back. I think in a previous video, Fiona, you and I talked about whether or not Chris can come back from this. And I kind of thought this might be the end of Chris Harrison and The Bachelor. He's had a great run, but I didn't really see him coming back. But at this point, there might be a little bit of hope for him. He originally said he was temporarily stepping back from The Bachelor, and I thought that meant actually forever. But at this point, if he continues to move in the direction he's moving, we may see Chris Harrison back at The Bachelor franchise in the future.
Changing Chris Harrison's just views and opinions and thoughts and just relearning in order to be more inclusive and to just, see through other people's perspectives a little bit better, that is also going to take time, right? So while I think Chris might be able to come back one day, I just feel like if they have to hire someone who has a newer and fresher perspective that's a little bit more all inclusive and they end up doing, really well on the show, I just don't see them ever like backtracking and just being like, okay, well, I think Chris Harrison's like good to go now, so we can like bring him back. I just feel like that would be a really
Yeah.
awkward transition, even though right now we're kind of like, oh, but like he's so tied to it and it would be sad to see him go. I just think once they make that transition, it's going to be hard to come back. So my guess is that he'll be gone permanently as opposed to temporarily.
Interesting. Well, obviously, we're going to see how all of that continues to develop. Let's talk about, this is the part I said, little spoiler alert, you guys. It's become pretty obvious through rumors, spoilers, honestly, just watching the season that Rachel is pretty much guaranteed to walk away our winner. I think it's worth noting that Reality Steve has officially, put his stamp on the fact that they have currently broken up, which I have to say, I don't find all too surprising. I think whenever a Bachelor Nation couple can make it under the public scrutiny and the pressure and the rumors and the, oh my God, so much on them when they, declare themselves in love at the end of this, it's a miracle, let alone a couple like Rachel and Matt who clearly did not know each other at the end of the season. Are you surprised by the news that, at this stage of the game, they may not be together, Gabby?
I am surprised because it just seems like in the past few weeks of Matt doing press interviews that he seemed very happy with his ending, very happy, in general in life. So, of course, new things have come out and things have changed since then. But I don't know. I'm not even sure if they've been spending time together or if they're still in hiding or, how that's even worked. But I'm sure that'll be a part of what we hear a little bit more from Matt in the coming weeks.
I somewhat disagree because yes, they had their connection and he seemed very smitten with her. I don't know how I wasn't surprised. I'll just say that. Not at all. I don't know how any couple can face what the two of them have faced. Maybe there was a time when all of this first started to come out that it was really something that they were going to try to attack together head on. Maybe they've already reached that point to where they were that committed, they were going to do that. But this is just uncharted territory for anybody, any couple. So I'm not surprised at all that if it is true that they ended up together, they did break up, not surprised by that at all. So basically, with everything that they've had to endure, even if they didn't have this huge scandal take place, we never know what goes on the ins and outs of a relationship. But as far as being surprised that their relationship has come to an end, I don't blame them. I don't know really any couple who could probably take a hit like this.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. We of course don't know what After the Final Rose is going to look like, or to be perfectly honest with you guys, if we're even getting an After the Final Rose. I have a feeling that behind closed doors, people may be scrambling right now. Obviously, when Chris addressed the fact that he would be stepping back, he did mention that, someone else would be stepping into his role to have, some of the conversations that I think fans are hoping they're going to be tough conversations, but hoping to see, happen on the Bachelor Nation stage. Does it feel like to you guys at this point that if After the Final Rose happens, there is just a lot riding on that night? There are like 7 different conversations, I feel like, none of them easy, that people want to see, people want answers to. I mean, I do not envy the producers pretty much ever. I could never do that job. But to tactfully and artfully and thoughtfully put together an After the Final Rose where, let's face it, 2 people aren't in love and you're battling multiple scandals, there's a lot of pressure, I have to imagine. What do you think, Mariah?
Absolutely. I'm sure they're all trying to figure out how they're even going to make this happen. They don't have Chris Harrison. They have to find a host. Everyone pretty much hates every move the producers have made, and we want to see a totally different show, starting with After the Final Rose. So this is a good opportunity for them to take the first step in the right direction. I'm sure at this point they don't know exactly what they're going to do, but we're going to see some changes. I completely agree, Fiona. I do not envy the producers. I'm sure at times it's a great job and it comes with all its thrills, but right now, given the current climate, I do not envy anybody who has to be in a position of making the decisions or calling any of the shots. There's so many different things that we want to see addressed that need to be addressed. I don't even know if Rachel would even show up to something like this after the heat she's taken. It's a big question mark for me. I have no idea really how we even got to this point or how the Bachelor franchise is going to maneuver this.
This reminds me of Hannah Brown's season as well as Peter's season because in both of those cases, there was a happy engagement at the end, but things spiraled and went a different direction. And that's where we all saw it unfold was at the After the Final Rose. We found out about Jed. He was a bit of a fraud. Seems like this is a similar case with Rachel. And then with Peter, he just kind of switched gears and wanted to pursue things with Maddie as opposed to Hannah Ann. So I think this is one of the seasons where we definitely need an After the Final Rose because things have changed and you kind of can't leave fans hanging. So, of course, in those other seasons, something as big as racism wasn't involved. So it's definitely going to be tougher to navigate, but it's something that they owe us. And I mean, like you said, Mariah, it's going to be a good opportunity for them to take that first step.
Right. I think a lot of us were hoping that this season would represent positive steps forward. And since it's been riddled with, let's face it, a lot of mistakes, this is kind of their last and final shot to get something really right and to, listen, they have been creating a lot of conversation. I won't say that, but I don't think that they've created it in a way that they, had hoped. These are critical conversations, not conversations that have inspired change or sparked debate in a more positive light. Let's get to final thoughts because I feel like personally, this statement from Matt was very, very important. I am so thankful that he wrote it, that he didn't hold back, because I think he deserves, even if it spoils the last few episodes, I feel like he deserves to have an opinion. His opinion, as someone who's been watching him search for love, is very important to me. I want to know how he's feeling now. So, how important do you think this statement was, Gabby?
You're exactly right, Fiona. We as the viewers, we're invested in this person's love life now and everything that comes with it when you tune into the very first episode. So I think Matt's opinion and where he stands right now is very relevant, especially being the lead of the show, having gone through it all, being the first Black Bachelor, carried all that way this entire season, and then is still dealing with some of the loose ends that they're trying to scramble and figure out right now. But yeah, I'm just looking forward to hearing more from him. As he said, we're going to get soon.
So glad that Matt was finally able to just make his statement. I feel like he was probably battling a lot of different things, what he should say, when he should say it. And this all happened to him. This was his experience. This was a woman that he fell in love with. I mean, obviously, spoiler. And I can only imagine how devastating that is to find out somebody's past represents something that is so incredibly offensive. Somebody that you love. It's almost like, I never knew you at all, which, Gabby, you had mentioned earlier. I mean, it's just not enough time to really get to know the ins and outs of somebody before an engagement. So it was really important that Matt was able to make this statement. I know we're all glad that we finally heard him address it. And I can only imagine he feels like a huge weight has been lifted off of his shoulders now that he has. So I am interested to see what future statements he makes. He mentioned earlier that he was going to address this more later on. So I think that's going to be good to hear what else he has to say about it.
As always, I totally agree with you both. You guys, on that note, we want to know how you are feeling, if you're processing this statement, what your thoughts are, and honestly, how invested you are in the rest of the season. Knowing that all of this is on the table, let us know down in the comments. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell because we will keep you updated on all things Matt James. As always, I'm your host, Fiona Zaring. I was joined by the wonderful Gabby Ganta and Mariah Davis. If you want to come say hi, our social handles are on the screen right now. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.